All right, so I just got done watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre on Netflix. I still have a few more of these movies to do on my channel. I've reviewed 1 through 5, so if you want to hear my thoughts on those movies, you can go check those out. But now let's talk about the new one since it just dropped. This one was directed by David Blue Garcia. This is his first horror movie, I believe. He did one movie before this called Trejano or something that's like Spanish for Texan. This is a Texan director like Toby Hooper, and this movie was not shot in Texas. This movie was shot in Bulgaria, I believe. And this movie was written by the guys who brought us the Don't Breathe movies and the Evil Dead remake, which is one of the best remakes. So when I saw that these two guys, Fede Alvarez and Rodo Saya something, sorry, I can't, I don't know how to say his last name, but those two guys, when I saw they were on board, I was like, all right, this has potential. But then it was like going straight to Netflix, and at first they fired the original director or directors. I think there was like two directors working together on this at one point, and then they got fired like a week or two in. Like there was so much stuff I was hearing before that made me think that this movie was going to be terrible. But then I heard who was writing it, and then I found out who was composing it, Colin Stetson, who did Hereditary. So that just raised my expectations. Did this movie disappoint me? No, it did not. So, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 tells a story about a group of young adults who are going to this ghost town in Harlow, Texas to freshen it up, repaint it, start a new life because they're sick of the violence and madness in the city. And ironically, they find violence and madness in this little ghost town because of Leatherface. And he's been hiding out here for the last 50 years in this old abandoned orphanage with this lady. You've seen the trailer, I'm sure, and that's all in there. So he's been hiding with this woman for 50 years, and they come and piss him off, and he fights back, grabs his chainsaw, and starts massacring everybody. Let's start with my positives. When the movie opens up and you're just looking at the logos, you can already hear how amazing Colin's score is going to be. It is fantastic. I love the score he did for Hereditary, and this one is absolutely brilliant. He uses like animal sounds, like squealing and machinery. Like you can just hear power tools. It's fucking awesome. I like that this movie didn't try too hard to keep paying homage to the original. It gets kind of annoying when direct sequels or just sequels in general always try to keep like recreating scenes and shots and throwing things in like in every scene. This one only has a couple of homages, and one of them being they brought back John Larroquette, the narrator from part one. He is narrating the opening of this one as well. And I like the ghost town setting and the atmosphere of the film, the cinematography. It looks like a Fede Alvarez and Rodo, whatever his last name is. Sorry. It looks like, their Don't Breathe movies. It kind of has a little bit of a similar look with the colors. It just has a really beautiful look. And they put like a grainy filter on the movie to kind of make it look older and more gritty. I wasn't sure how I felt about his mask at first, like when I watched the trailer, but watching him walk around in that mask in this movie, it's really creepy and unsettling. The mask he wears in this one is really cool. It's not my favorite. My favorite is still the remake, but this is like top 3 looks of Leatherface. And I actually kind of liked the main two sisters. When I watched the trailer, I was kind of worried, like, I have a feeling I'm not going to like any of the protagonists, but by the end of the movie, I liked the sisters, their chemistry, and the arcs that they have, and I was on board, and I was actually rooting for their survival. But I think the main thing that most people will love about this movie, even if they hate it, the one thing that I think they'll at least appreciate is how gory and violent this movie is. It has easily, I believe, the biggest body count, and this is the goriest installment since the beginning, Texas Chainsaw, the beginning, the prequel. This one is, I think, more gory than that one. You got like 50 bodies in this film that are dropped by the hands of Leatherface, and he fucks them up in some unique ways. The first kill, I won't say what it is, but I think it might be my favorite kill. It's the first one. It was so vicious. I was so shocked by it. It set a good tone for the movie. Like, this is how violent and vicious this whole film's going to be. So it was a good starting kill. And also, the tone of the movie overall is very serious. When I watched the trailer, they made it look like it was going to be too jokey. Like, that guy's like, oh, you're canceled, bro. I thought it was going to have tons of cringy dialogue, but that's really the only joke in the movie. The film is mainly serious, and I love that. And this movie isn't just a gore fest. There actually is some sequences that build some really good suspense. You know, you got a girl hiding underneath a bed, hiding underneath the house, this chick in a car, and, you know, there's a couple of good Leatherface jump scares in this movie. And I love that Leatherface is by himself again, like in Texas Chainsaw 3D, so this one feels more like a slasher. It's not a crazy family movie anymore like most of them. It's a slasher, it's just one guy fucking everybody up. And lastly, the way this movie ends was just amazing. It competes with the original for my favorite ending. The original will always be iconic to me. You know, the dance, Sally screaming her head off, but the way this one ended, my jaw dropped. So getting into my dislikes, I don't like the addition of Sally in this movie. She doesn't really feel necessary. She feels shoehorned in just to have a legacy character, fan service. It reminded me of Halloween 2018, and at the end of the day, it could have been anybody else, really. It could have just been some other police officer showing up to fight Leatherface, and I would have been just as happy or happier. Also, this has nothing to do with the movie itself, what's in it, but the title, fuck the title. I'm sick of this trend in Hollywood right now. In the horror genre, really. I don't think dramas are doing this. Like, let's make a sequel to The Notebook, and we'll call it The Notebook. I'm sick of it, all right? Just call it something else. Anything. Just put any other word beneath Texas Chainsaw Massacre Returns, something, so I can call it something else besides, hey, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, have you seen it? And then they have to be like, well, which one? The first one, the remake, this one, that one? Just quit making me say what fucking year a movie came out in when I talk about the movie. And this isn't really a huge gripe, but I feel like this movie could have benefited from more scenes, more of a runtime. It is really short. As soon as the credits started rolling, I paused it. 74 minutes. This is a short movie, and it could have used more in the beginning. You know, they could have built these characters, the other ones, up more so that you care about them a little bit more, but it's just a very quick setup, and it just gets going, which is not always a bad thing. I like fast movies. This is a really fast-moving movie, and it's really short, but I feel like that might hurt it a little bit for others. It probably needed more in the first act. And one last little quibble, it doesn't hurt the film at all, but because it's a direct sequel, you know, it's supposed to be the same Leatherface, it didn't really feel 100% like I was watching a much older version of that character from the first one. This felt like a different Leatherface to me, and he's much more stronger. He got stronger with age. So final thoughts, this movie is very entertaining, quickly paced, very short, and has a ton of kills, gore, and some fan service here and there, but not too much, and a amazing ending, and sets up a sequel that I hope we get, because I just had a blast with this one. I loved it. So when it comes to Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022, I give this one 4.5 stars. So, spoiler discussion. Spoilers. You have been warned. This movie is on Netflix. Go check it out. So, in the opening, we got John Larroquette narrating, and he's narrating a TV documentary that's on a television at a local gas station in Harlow or outside of Harlow. So we get to have a little quick recap of what happened in the original before we meet our characters. And our main two characters are these two sisters. One of them survived a school shooting, so both of these characters are very anti-gun. But then, of course, by the end of the movie, they have to use guns to fight Leatherface. And as they're driving into town, you can see on the sign it says population 1974, an homage to the original movie that came out in 1974, of course. So when they arrive in town, they see that there's a Confederate flag hanging over an orphanage where Leatherface has been living for the last 50 years. I think they say he got there by like 1975. So pretty quickly after the events of part one, he separated himself from the cook and started living in this place for some reason. I don't know if they say anything about the cook, if he died. I'm assuming he's dead by now, but I'm not sure when or how exactly he died. But the friend goes to take down the Confederate flag, and we get this shot where you can see to the left of frame Leatherface unmasked. We get to see his face in this movie. That might piss some people off because, everyone likes to keep their favorite villain a mystery. Like, what's his face look like? I don't want to know. But in this one, we get to see what his face looks like. And he's just sitting in a chair, and then when it cuts back to that shot, he's no longer in the chair. So then Dante and Melody, they bump into Mrs. Mac or Mick MC. Her name on Letterboxd is Mrs. MC. So they bump into the old lady, and she says, "This is my property. You guys have to go." So there's a mix-up. They think they own this property. She says it's hers. And she falls ill, and Leatherface and her and one of their friends, the blonde friend, take off with the cops to drive her to a hospital. And on the way, this woman dies, and that's what sets off Leatherface. He just lost his new mommy, and he's pissed off, and he grabs the cop in the back seat of the cop car. He grabs his arm, breaks his arm, and uses the bone of his arm to stab him in the throat with it numerous times. And then, of course, the cop accidentally shoots the other cop driving the car, which is in a lot of movies, but that's what causes the crash. And then Leatherface drags his new mom out of the car and takes her face. That's the face he's wearing throughout the whole movie. I thought that was interesting. Like, I guess that's his way of showing love. Because at first I'm like, why would you cut her face up? That seems mean. You love her, but that's his way of showing love, I guess. He takes her face, wears her with honor, and then starts bashing the one cop's head in with like the oxygen tank, and then takes the one girl and like guts her while strangling her. And that scene was really suspenseful because he's like gone for a few moments, and you're wondering where he is. And she's like playing dead at first, smart, but then of course she gets gutted. And after she gets gutted, we have that camera picture taking sound effect from the original movie, which has been in every single movie in the franchise, basically. So it's right around this point when we're introduced to Sally. The blonde girl made a call on the radio. The gas clerk guy heard it, called up Sally, like, "Your friend's back." And so she gets in the car, gears up, and she, for some reason, is still holding on to this Polaroid 50 years later. So she's really traumatized. She has not forgotten about that night. Even 50 years later, it still haunts her. And who took that picture? Was that the picture that the hitchhiker took? Because I didn't see them have a camera. In the original, the hitchhiker is the one taking photos, but then doesn't he take that photo and light it on fire? So I'm just wondering who took that photo. Was it them or the hitchhiker? And then Dante and Melody find out that Mrs. Mac, she did have a deed. They kicked her off her own property and, stressed her out so much that she dropped dead. So now they feel really guilty about it. And then Leatherface comes up with a meat cleaver and slices his cheek wide open. It is very gnarly looking. And then at some point, he stumbles out of the house and bleeds to death, alerting the others of what's going on. So they all get on the bus and hide. And meanwhile, this local redneck dude goes inside the house where Dante was to find out what the fuck's going on, while the main girl Melody is hiding underneath the bed. And when he encounters Leatherface, he fucks his world up. He kicks his leg in, he uses the sledgehammer thing against his knee and bends his knee backwards and then throws him up against the window, and a shard of glass hits his throat, throws him on the ground, and starts hammering his head like 6, 7 times until his head is mush. Also, there's a scene before that where Leatherface retrieves his iconic chainsaw from the original, and the director has said in interviews that he was told that that is the chainsaw from the original and that it had a hard time starting on set because of how old it was. I wonder if that's true. But he grabs it out of the wall, so it's very much like Rob Zombie's Halloween, where Michael buried the knife underneath the floorboards. He buried his chainsaw in the wall. And we also get a quick moment where we see a different side of Leatherface, where he's mourning. Like, he's really upset. He's grabbing his mom's dress, hugging it, and then he starts putting her makeup on her face. And it was funny, there was a line earlier where his mom said, "Oh, I didn't know company was coming over. I would have put my face on." Then Sally finds the crash site, and then she discovers the faceless body of Mrs. Mack, and the look of her skinless face, the way her eyeballs are just staring at you, very haunting. Then we get the sequence with Melody underneath the house. Leatherface throws a hammer at her. She falls through the floorboards. She's crawling underneath the house. The chainsaw goes through. It's chasing her, sawing through the wood really quickly. And then it hits a pipe, and shit bursts out of it and just dumps all over her head. But luckily, it's downpouring at this point, so when she gets out in the rain, it quickly washes all the shit off of her face. And then we get the bus massacre. And, the guy's like, "You're canceled, bro, if you do anything." And you can see one of the comments on his phone, on his live feed, is from the director saying, "Who hired this guy?" And one of them's like, "This all looks fake." And so the bus driver's severed head gets thrown in first, and then Leatherface walks in, chainsaws everybody. One guy gets sawed like diagonally, almost like all the way through. Then this one guy gets a chainsaw through his ass, out his dick, and then pushed up against a woman, and I'm assuming the chainsaw went inside of her privates as well. So we get a guy and a woman with a chainsaw through both of their private parts together, like they're mushed together as the chainsaw's revving in their privates. Fucking awesome. And then just arms, legs, just blood. It's flying everywhere while the main two girls are hiding in the bathroom. And then the one chick that works at the bank is trying to crawl out the window, and she half makes it out. Her upper half makes it out, but the other half falls back because he chainsaws her. Fucking amazing. Like, so creative. Thank you. And this is when Sally gets more involved in the plot. She finally meets up with the main two characters right after the bus massacre. She gets them in the back of her car and locks them in. Like, it's you he wants. And then goes to confront Leatherface while they're locked in the car, which I wasn't really a fan of that. Having her character do that, it wasn't necessary. Like, she should have just been like, "This is my fight now. Here, grab my car keys. You can go. I got my own business to attend to." Like, why trap them in the back of your car like that? So she goes to confront Leatherface. He's just sitting in a chair. And then she has him at gunpoint and never pulls the trigger in this scene. It's so stupid. Like, she wants to have this moment. I get it. She's like, "Do you remember me? Do you remember Franklin? Do you remember so-and-so, Jerry?" And it's just like, pull the fucking trigger. She does shoot him in the shoulder, but then when she's outside with him, she shoots at him, misses like every shot, keeps hitting the giant chainsaw in his hand, and then he lifts her up in the ground, chainsaw through her gut, revving, and it throws her into the pile of garbage like she's trash. And you think she's dead, but she actually is still clinging on to life later on to protect Lila. But yeah, it was just like, really? So this character has been preparing for 50 years, training with guns, I assume, like Lori shooting mannequins, but it all led to this? Nothing? She did nothing? So after Sally is initially chainsawed and you think she's dead, the girls get in her car and they try to hit Leatherface, but they barely hit him, and he just bounces off of their car, and then they swerve and crash like they always do. It's a trope. I can't stand it. Fucking get control of the wheel. So then Lila runs off and almost gets killed by Leatherface, but Sally, right before she dies, fires one more round, scares him off into this old abandoned like movie theater place, and then hands her the shotgun with one last shell in it. Or maybe there was multiple shells. It looked like she just put one in there, but she hands her a gun, and then she goes off to fight Leatherface because she tells her, like, don't run away, you know, because he's going to haunt you for 50 years like he did me. So she's trying to, you know, make her avoid making the same mistake that she did, running away. So then you get the whole final battle in the movie theater or whatever this place is that has, like, this giant, like, water hole in the middle of the room for some reason. You know, Leatherface sets up a trap and tackles her into the water, and we don't know what's going on at first, like who's going to come out of this alive. You know, she comes out, and then of course Leatherface comes out right after her. The sister comes in to save her, and then she shoots him multiple times. Like, Leatherface gets shot like 3 or 4 times in this movie, so he's almost becoming immortal like Michael Myers at this point. And then the other sister, Melody, she takes the chainsaw, hits him right up the face with it. He falls in the water. You think he's dead, and then they get in their car. They're driving off. The car is like one of those cars that drives itself. It's like on autopilot, and they're just talking like, oh, we should actually live here. You know, I changed my mind. And then boom, Leatherface pops up. Predictable. You knew it was coming, but you didn't see this coming. When he grabs the sister, he pulls her out, and then the other sister sticks her head through the sunroof to witness her sister, Melody, get her head chainsawed off. And then he holds her head in a chainsaw and does that dance again, just like in the original. But now he has her sister's severed head. And he just starts dancing, and she's screaming. It's very much like the original with Sally in the back of the car, driving away screaming as he's dancing. But this is much more brutal because of the sister's head. Fuck, that was amazing. Absolutely brutal. And I heard that he did that Leatherface dance with the chainsaw in one take. So just a great jaw-dropping, shocking ending. I did not expect that to happen. I thought that when he grabbed her out, that there was going to be another struggle. Like, it was going to go on another couple minutes. Like, she was going to get out of the car and run after the sister, and maybe one of them or both of them would have died then, but not so quickly. Just boom, boom, bye-bye. It was like he was holding the head like, fuck you, I actually won, you didn't. See you in 50 years when you're like Sally over there in the garbage. You'll be over there with her then. But then in 50 years, he'd be dead, so I take that back. But you know what I mean? Like, he's like, fuck you. But yeah, he wouldn't be back in 50 years because he would definitely be dead by then. But then again, Grandpa in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is like, what, 130? And he's still alive. The Sawyers live forever. So maybe he would be around in 50 years after this, you know? So one thing that is missing from this movie is cannibalism. I just realized that. There's none of that. So, but yeah, in the post-credit sequence, you see Leatherface go back to his house in the original. So that was pretty cool to see. So they're setting up the sequel, and I hope that Lila is going to be the new Laurie Strode seeking revenge to get Leatherface in the next movie at his house. That would be a cool sequel, and I hope the same writers come back, because Fede and Rodo, they are just great storytellers and good directors, and I hope that they are involved in the next movie. And kudos to the director of this movie. It's very well shot, very entertaining. I had a blast with it. What are your thoughts on this movie? Let me know in the comments below. Where is it in your ranking? Where would you put it? Let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here, you can hit this like button and become a subscriber today just by clicking on my cartoon face in about 5 seconds. And remember, it's all an opinion. You don't need to get upset about it.